afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this interim hearing of the Transportation Finance and Policy Committee for this Tuesday, December 12th. We have one agenda item, and that is a update on the TRIP program, the Transportation Rider Investment Program. And before we get into the hearing, I wanted to also announce that in addition to the members that are in the room, we also have Representatives Nelson, Brand, and Fogelman joining us via Zoom or online. So we have a good number of members here, and I appreciate that, given the fact that this is an interim hearing and we're into the busy holiday season. So our first item of business is our minutes. Representative Petersburg, this must be from late last year, or earlier this year, late last legislative.
So if I could ask a parliamentary inquiry, if we can't really meet officially, can we approve the minutes officially?
I will ask council. No, I will ask House Research on that. Okay, that is as always, Representative Petersburg, you raise a good process issue, and we will hold off on that until
The officials.
February, whenever our first meeting is. So
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And then our next item of business is to go right into the hearing. And our first agenda item is to hear an overview of the program. And again, I want to first of all thank Representative Tabke, Vice Chair Tabke, for all of his work over now I think going on 4 years on this issue. And you know, in many ways this is, you know, a hearing for us to learn more about what has happened in terms of transit safety since we adjourned in May. And we'll start that process with an update from and a presentation from the Met Council. So, and then we'll have some opportunities for public engagement with this. So we will have a panel of Met Council leaders here, including Chair Zelli, our new Metro Transit Manager, Leslie Candaris, and I wanted to welcome and congratulate Leslie Candaris on the appointment. And then we'll have our Ernest Morales III, the Chief of the Metro Transit Police, and Chief Morales has appeared before this committee in the past, I think shortly after the appointment. So it's good to have him back. So if you all want to come up either individually or as a group, however you want to do it, I'm open to that. And we will go till approximately 1:25 with this. And so members, if you, I think the way we'll handle this is to have the three Met Council leaders make their presentations, and then I'll open it up for questions. Chair Zelli, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm Charlie Zelli, Chair of the Metropolitan Council, and it's my honor to be here before you again. I am joined, as the Chair mentioned, by Chief Morales and General Manager Leslie Candaris. You know, honestly, this is a great opportunity to share an update and what we've been realizing even since the close of the last legislative session on transit activity, the Transit Rider Investment Program, or TRIP, and the Transit Ridership Investment Program, or TSIP. Also, we're going to be talking about, in addition to ridership trends, also some of the procedures I know that are of interest to this committee, like cleaning, maintenance, repair standards. But first, I would be remiss if I didn't kind of say something that I think you all and everybody in this room understand so well, that transit is an integral part of the fabric of neighborhoods and communities. We transport tens and thousands of people to work every day, to school every day, to medical appointments, airports, sporting events, really more and more not just commutes, but how people are living their lives. Many without the need of cars. A car-free life in the Twin Cities is readily becoming a possibility. Even in the darkest times of COVID-19, there was a lockdown, but thousands of our employees were carrying thousands of people, essential workers, essential trips. As many as 63,000 every day were traveling on our trains and buses. And we know when we talk about neighborhoods, we don't run through neighborhoods. We are part of the neighborhood, and we recognize that you all understand and appreciate the critical nature of transit networks because in part of the generational legislation you passed last year, really giving us sustainable funding and plus some high standards to perform. So it's a pleasure that we are actually well on our way toward not just a dream, but actual plan as we think about this integrated, connected transit network. Of course, the number one issue and the number one goal for all of us at Metro Transit, Metro Council, is the customer experience, the safe, reliable experience for both customers and our employees. And I could say we're well on our way, on a pathway to meet those goals. We know that there's data, and we'll probably share some of that with you, but also some of the anecdotes we hear from property owners along the lines, from the airport personnel, from people who use our facilities, that we're improving. We're not where we need to be, but we are definitely making a headway toward creating this environment of a welcoming environment. Of course, I'm sitting here with two really important elements of this plan. Just in February, we recruited and hired a dynamic leader, Chief Morales, to lead Metro Transit Police, who has already made a huge impact. And then, of course, really important, a longtime chief of staff, but then becoming an interim and now affirming as the general manager, Leslie Caderas, comes with a vision and the expertise, and actually is one of the primary authors of our safety and security plan, which was adopted by the Metropolitan Council itself in June of 2022. Of course, we know that means retaining police. We know that means recruiting new officers, new customer service officers. We also know that it involves contracting with supplemental security, and we'll talk more in detail about that. I would point out just two quick things, then pass it off to the experts. We had a forum in November at the University of Minnesota where we focused on issues in the public realm. That's not just transit and platforms, but libraries, stations, community parks, and many of you participated in that. It's really gratifying to know that we're not in this alone, that we think about what ills are facing society. Transit's in the middle of it, maybe central to it, but we're not the only element, and it's gratifying to work with many other partners in this room, other local governments, social service agencies, other state agencies, to help provide a response. We learned a lot, and I think we're developing a dialogue as we think about best practices we learn from each other through collaboration. We also look around the country. I was particularly struck by my friend, General Manager Leslie Richards, who runs SEPTA, that's the Philadelphia Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority. They have some incredible innovative ideas. They were speaking at that conference, and we have visited Philadelphia. We're visiting other areas to bring best practice, and there's not just one element. Of course, there's multiple that you will discuss today. So with that, I will turn it over to Chief Morales, who will, and I believe we have a PowerPoint and an overview to give you our current situation, and then really talk about updates and where we're going from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair
afternoon, Chair.
Zelli, and welcome, Chief Morales, and please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Chief Ernest Morales III. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Committee. I just want to give you a quick overview. Metro Transit Police Department will be discussing the Metro Transit Police Department calls for service, crime data, as well as status updates with the implementation of the 2023 Transportation Omnibus provisions, meaning the Transit Service Intervention Project, the Transit Rider Investment Program, also known as TRIP, and the Transit Rider Activity, as well as the cleaning and repair standards. Go ahead. The Metro Transit Police Department, we're committed to personal safety and quality of life for customers that ride our system on a daily basis. We've been able to do this with the officer's response and investigative responsibilities on our BRTs, rail commuters, and the transit properties. Currently, we have 109 fully sworn full-time police officers, and out of 171, and we have 12 community service police officers out of 70. When we talk about calls for service, if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see that those were dispatched, the light blue. Dispatched is 911 calls. Steadily, since the beginning of the year, those calls have been going down until recently in September, when we started going into the colder months, where we had a slight uptick, which is expected. But we've been able to combat that with officer-initiated calls. So this is proactive policing, and you'll see that those calls steadily went up, except in September, when we were balancing the surge of calls being dispatched by 911 and what we currently do. So that was the balance. If you look at this, you'll see heat maps for Q1, Q2, and Q3. On the top are the dispatch 911 calls that I just spoke about, and on the bottom are the proactive self-initiated police calls. You can closely see that they resemble each other. Based on the 911 dispatch calls, our officers are responding proactively, and they're responding to the same areas. So those maps pretty much repeat and image one another. When we speak about the 2023 reported crimes, if you look from the first 3 quarters, Q1 on the left-hand map, Q2 and Q3, you'll see from Q1 to Q2, we had a reduction in reported crimes of 14.31%. When you compare Q3 over Q2, we had an additional 22.3%. That overall led to a reduction of our approximately 33%, Q3 over Q1. When we looked at top crimes, 7 top crimes, proactive policing, and even other crimes, we saw a steady decline across the board. Group A reported crimes, we have a steady decrease, and those are 7 major crimes. So Q1 over Q2, we saw a 7.83 reduction in crime. More importantly, Q2 over Q3, we saw a 24.78% reduction in crime. 2023 quarterly crime location mapping. Q1, Q2, and Q3. As you can see, as we focused and honed in on our enforcement, this map started dispersing sporadically throughout the area. In Q3, you can see that the concentrated area of crimes has started to spread, which is exactly what we're looking for. While we want to eliminate crime totally, we understand that that's an impossibility. So what we're trying to do is address the conditions with our community partnerships to address the displacement that we are now seeing. How are we doing this? We're doing this through patrol operations. We've taken a proactive policing approach, joint beats and initiative, and update to ComStat reporting. What this means is that I've actually had the police officers get out of their vehicles, report to historical problematic spots, zone out their patrol areas. So from now on, what they do is they go to a designated location, they get onto the LRVs, they ride approximately 3 to 4 stops, they come back to their cars. In between these stops, they are directed to step off into the platform to make eye contact with the individual, because that's a positive interaction. We have our commuters now going back home and speaking to their friends and families about the interaction they had with our police officers throughout their day. We've also been able to do this with the assistance of supplemental security. So we originally identified 6 problematic and historical locations that gave us problems. We quickly realized that we needed to add to that, and we added a 7th location, which was the I-35W and Lake Street shelter, BRT shelter. We started out at Lake Street and Midtown, which was a overrun station when I first took over. It's now a model station. I would say we still have a long way to go. We know that there are problematic situations ongoing in the surrounding areas, but we're heading in the right direction, and I'm pleased with the progress there. Supplemental security has been great. We also have, and we run that 24 hours a day. We have 24-hour security at Franklin Avenue as well. We have security guards up at Brooklyn Center Transit Center. I already spoke about I-35. We also have Chicago Lake Transit Center and the Uptown train station. We have a planned expansion to VCB, hopefully in the next quarter of the new year coming. We know that we need a robust plan for that location. When we look at supplemental security and their effects here, I want to start out with Lake Street Midtown Station. If you notice here, January 2023, we see the officer-initiated calls, the dispatch calls for service, as well as crimes. And what I want you to notice is that line going down the middle is when we contracted security there. And after that took place, we saw a steady decline in all 3 indicators. When you look at Franklin Station, the same thing, except with the exception of the blue line that went up, and that's because of proactive policing, where we put our uniformed officers there to help the supplemental security establish a presence in the area. When we look at I-35, once again, the lines and the indicators, we already saw a decline going down as the months were getting warmer. However, we knew it was a problem and we wanted to establish a presence there. So once we applied supplemental security there, we saw all 3 of our indicators also going down. In Brooklyn Center Transit Center, that was a little harder to get around. We were having challenges there and experiences there. We wanted to put our finger on it. We knew that we called on our community-based partners, which was a Mother's Love, great partnership with us there to tackle those issues that we were experiencing there. I'm happy to report that that situation has improved and gotten better. Chicago Lake Transit Center was also a historical problematic spot. We put supplemental security there as well, and we saw those indicators start going down as well. I'll turn it over to General Manager Leslie Canderas now. Thank you.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Hornstein and committee members. My name is Leslie Canderas, and I'm the General Manager at Metro Transit. And for my portion, I'm going to provide a status update on where Metro Transit stands on implementing several provisions that were part of the Transportation Omnibus earlier this year. In general, we are committed to providing a safe and welcoming experience for all of our customers as well as our employees. This is our top priority. I'll share that earlier this year, just back in November, actually, we began having some community sessions as it relates to Metro Transit Forward, our initiative to do strategic visioning and really invite people in to share their thoughts on really how we can co-create a bold vision for transit in our region. And as we invited people in, 2 of the common comments we received is they want a transit system that's safe and clean. And this wasn't new information for us, but it very much reinforced the focus we've been placing on this over the last several years. Today, we're going to update you on where we stand in terms of implementing the Transit Service Intervention Project, the Transit Rider Investment Program, the cleaning and repair standards work. I don't believe this was listed on the agenda, but we felt it's really part of this broader set of efforts to demonstrate to people that we're taking care of our system and sending the signal that our system is well regulated and maintained. We'll talk about transit rider activity, which includes action to have the Metropolitan Council adopt a code of conduct for riders. And we'll not present on, but just wanted to note that we're aware that we owe an annual report to the legislature that will summarize the progress we're making on this. And the first one of those reports will be due in February. So the new provisions included in the Transportation Omnibus this year have been incorporated into this broader safety and security action plan that Chair Zelli mentioned earlier. And the plan itself is really the culmination of years of work at the council to really understand what safety on public transit means to our riders and our employees. So this started back actually in June 2020, shortly after the murder of George Floyd. Chair Zelli called on the council to do a review of the Metro Transit Police Department. The first step of this was contracting with the Citizens League, who also worked with the Twin Cities Innovation Alliance, to spend several months doing deep community engagement to have conversations about safety on transit. They interacted with over 1,000 people as part of this process. And some of what we learned through that work was safety on transit is much more than enforcement. It's more than policing. People shared with us that they felt safer on transit when there were more riders. And at the same time, riders' behavior deeply influences their experience on transit and their sense of safety on transit as well. They shared with us the conditions of our facilities, whether they're well lighted also contributes to their sense of safety, even whether their vehicles on time, their bus or train, that also helps provide a sense of security and safety while riding. So, through this deep community engagement effort, we learned that we really need a multifaceted approach to improve public safety and customer experience. And the second step of this was the Metropolitan Council formed a police work group of Metropolitan Council members to really digest that community engagement, do some additional research, really look at peer agency practices, and provide some recommendations. And the key piece coming out of that work group was tasking Metro Transit staff to really look at this work and develop an action plan to improve conditions on our system, train and support employees, and also engage customers and partners. And again, really looking at a multidimensional, multi-pronged approach to improving public safety. Part of what we heard throughout this process, both from our council members as well as the public, is the importance of transparency. So those crime stats and calls for service data that the chief provided earlier, that's part of quarterly reporting we provide to the council and also make available publicly. We have a website focused on our action plan and our progress, as well as crime data on our website as it relates to performance. So, again, the reason I wanted to kind of step back and put these recent provisions into context is a lot of what we've learned over these past few years has been informing how we've been implementing the provisions passed earlier this year. I'll also mention that when, right now our action plan has 43 different action items, and when people hear that, it sounds like it's a scattershot approach, but in reality, there are some really key central thrusts to this work, and a major element of that is developing layers of official presence on our system. So we know that we have Metro Transit Police Department. Police officers remain an important part of official presence on our system. This includes our homeless action team that are members of the police department, they're police officers, and they're trained to work with people who are experiencing homelessness, connecting them to services. In addition to our sworn officers, we have community service officers. And this year, we've added supplemental security officers, as the chief described. We've also launched the Transit Service Intervention Project, which I'll talk more about in a moment, but that's providing yet another layer of people out on the system, providing connections to services, conducting outreach with our riders. And then the piece that we're really building now is the Transit Rider Investment Program. And that piece of the legislation called for the creation of TRIP personnel that not only will inspect fares and issue citations when a person's non-compliant, but will also be trained to provide customer service, assist customers. They'll be trained to use Narcan if necessary and so forth. So a year ago, this looked very different. We really had our police officers as our primary form of presence with some help from CSOs here and there. And so, as we're closing out 2023, I think we feel that we've really made progress on this front to make sure we have multiple types of people out there on our system interacting with customers. So the first of the provisions that we'll talk about is the Transit Service Intervention Project. And this was established to provide coordinated, high-visibility intervention on light rail transit lines, providing for enhanced social service outreach, engagement, code of conduct regulation, and law enforcement. So the legislation that passed in May required a June 1st launch date. So we did kick this program off on June 1st. We were able to do that largely because of the leadership and the hard work of our homeless action team, who did this type of work in terms of convening nonprofit organization, county partners, and so forth. And so they really allowed us to get going right in June in terms of holding outreach events and really ramping up the connection to customers who may be in need of service. Throughout this summer, we worked to contract with community-based organizations. We now have 10 contracts in place. In a moment, I'll show the list of names of organizations partnering with us. And this has allowed us, again, to build up that layer of presence and really making sure we have people on the system who can provide access to mental health treatment, substance use disorder treatment, referrals to housing and other shelter services, and just other elements that were called for in this part of the legislation. And I'll mention too, there's a law enforcement component to this as well. Metro Transit Police Department has a long track record of partnering with other police departments. And as one example, through the Transit Service Intervention Project, they've entered into an agreement with the University of Minnesota to provide some additional presence on the campus. So on this slide, you can see the long list of organizations that the council was called on to seek participation from as part of this provision in the law. And so as you can see, it's departments, Minnesota departments, counties and cities that have light rail in their area, as well as organizations such as ATU, the union that represents transit operators at Metro Transit, NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness in Minnesota. So, I think from our perspective, we really appreciate that the legislature recognized it will take a coalition to really address the challenges we're seeing on transit. And transit has a really key and important role to play in that. But this legislation has really helped us organize and convene a broader coalition of partners focused on addressing some of the challenges we're seeing on our system. And I'll note that this group meets on a bi-monthly basis. And the photo here is from a September convening where we brought people together in person to assess what we've done so far and look at opportunities to coordinate more strongly together and make more of an impact moving forward. So on this slide, this is the list of the 10 organizations that have contracts with us to provide social service outreach, connections to service, and other types of services under the Transit Service Intervention Project as outlined in law. And then this just gives you a sense of the activity thus far. So again, kicked off in June, and since from June through November, more than 530 people have been contacted as part of this work, and that's resulted in 177 referrals. As you can see from this slide, the blue represents referrals related to housing, and the yellow represents referrals related to shelter. So combined, over half the referrals are pertaining to housing or shelter, followed by the red wedge there, which relates to recovery services. And again, I mentioned the homeless action team before, but they remain a critical partner in this work. And combined, they've conducted over 35 outreach events since we started back in June. So I'm going to move on to the Transit Rider Investment Program. So the Transit Service Intervention Project was meant to be a very quick, starting project that really increased social services and law enforcement on our system. The Transit Rider Investment Program is, really being built to continue to build on those layers of presence we're providing. So the Transit Rider Investment Program really has two main pieces to it. One is the establishment of these Transit Rider Investment Personnel, or TRIP personnel, which again will be people who are non-sworn personnel who are trained to assist customers in a multitude of ways, in addition to inspecting fares and issuing administrative citations. And then the second piece of the Transit Rider Investment Program is this creation of administrative citations for fare noncompliance. As you might recall, prior to this legislative session, in state law, if you rode transit without paying, that was a misdemeanor, typically carried a $180 fine. And so what changed this legislative session is we now are able to issue an administrative citation, which is not a criminal citation. It allows people who are not police officers to be doing fare inspection and writing citations, which therefore as we roll this out, we envision that will allow our police department to focus on more serious public safety threats and illegal behavior while having TRIP personnel really be the ones interacting with customers and being eyes and ears on our system, making sure to educate people on the code of conduct and alerting us to when there are serious issues occurring. And I'll mention this is something that's been under development for several years. The council initially had an agency initiative seeking administrative citation authority in 2019. And throughout that process, including the Citizens League and Twin Cities Innovation Alliance-led community engagement process, we heard a lot of support for this notion of moving away from a criminal citation for fare noncompliance. So this just provides an overview of where we are in implementing TRIP. And I should mention too that I think as we've been rolling this out, and as you'll see on this slide, just last Monday on December 4th, we began having community service officers inspecting fares and issuing citations. So I think it's raising questions about our fare policy generally. So just for some context, under state law, the Metropolitan Council sets a regional fare policy. The last time they changed fares or raised fares was in 2017, and as part of that, they also developed a transit assistance program, or TAP, which allows people who are income qualified to enroll and receive dollar rides. And so fares haven't increased since 2017. We still have that transit assistance program and work to really increase utilization on that. And I think as we've been out, our CSOs have been trained on TAP. Our future transit rider investment program personnel will be trained on TAP. The Transit Service Intervention Project partners who are out on our system have been trained on TAP. So our hope is as we move in this direction, we can really educate people about the resources available to them if they are struggling to pay for transit fares. I'll also mention that for people who are found to be non-fare compliant and receive an administrative citation, for the first violation, you can basically get out of the fine by putting $5 on a TAP card if you're income qualified for TAP. There are other ways to mitigate that initial fine because again, our goal is to help people be fare compliant and really educate people about our existing fare policy. So to kind of go back to the order on this slide for a moment, right after the legislative session concluded and the bill was signed into law, we started pivoting kind of existing work we already had underway at Metro Transit to increase non-sworn presence on our system to align with TRIP. So that included doing some additional public engagement this summer to really understand what people are hoping to see from this program, and that's influenced our initial plans for deployment. Part of the legislation required council action to formally adopt this program, and that happened on October 11th. I mentioned earlier on December 4th, we began the process with having community service officers inspecting fares, issuing citations. As the chief mentioned earlier, we currently have 12 part-time CSOs, so it's a small start, but it's really a good opportunity for us to start learning how this process works. And then just yesterday, the Metropolitan Council's Transportation Committee took up a business item that would amend our existing contract with Allied Security, our provider of supplemental security, to also provide TRIP agent services. So the full council is expected to take that item up tomorrow night. If they do authorize that contract amendment, it will allow us to move forward with Allied to get TRIP agents on the system early next year. So just a couple more quick slides because I know there's a lot of conversation to be had. As I mentioned, cleaning and repair standards was another provision of this bill this year. We know that the conditions of our system, whether they're clean, whether people are seeing broken glass, graffiti, very much send signals to how safe our system is. And so by October 1st, as required by the law, Metro Transit submitted its initial standards to the legislature. Our next deadline as it relates to this is to make sure it's really clear to everyone riding our system how to report a problem. And then we will have a report due to the legislature every 2 years to share how we're doing towards meeting those standards. And then really the final piece of the transportation omnibus that we'll speak about is the transit rider activity segment or section. One piece of this relates to code of conduct, and Metro Transit has long had a code of conduct, but what's changed this year is the requirement to have the council adopt the code of conduct. And also leading up to that, there was extensive public engagement as well as internal engagement to really understand from people who are on our system what behaviors are most problematic from their perspective, and ensuring that the rules we're establishing for riders reflect that. So this is another item that the council is expected to adopt tomorrow night, and once that adoption happens, we'll be able to put out new signage and really develop a campaign to provide a clear sense of what's expected while you ride transit and what riders should be able to expect from each other. Another component of that transit rider activity is requiring paid fare zones. We have paid fare zones, but this legislation has been a good opportunity to really assess what we had in place, and we recognize they're not as clearly marked as they could be. A lot of opportunity to improve there too. So again, this is an example of something that was a practice that we had in place, but the legislation has really prompted us to take a fresh look at it. And in general, we have a broader study underway looking at ways we can improve safety and the customer experience on light rail platforms, really seeking to build additional tools in our toolbox as it relates to that. And finally, the transit rider activity section of the law requires us to monitor our facilities, and cameras are a key part of that. We have thousands of cameras with real-time capability across our system. These are just some images from our cameras. And our real-time information center, which is based in the police department, is staffed the hours we're in service with both civilian and sworn personnel monitoring these cameras, and it's really been an important tool for us to make sure we can respond to what's happening on our system. And then our final slide is just saying, you've heard me say throughout this that we've really focused a lot of our work on what we're hearing from the public as well as our own employees. So this summer we did spend some time out on the system, interacting, intercepting customers, and getting their feedback on the code of conduct, those cleaning standards, as well as how we're developing the Transit Rider Investment Program. And that work is going to continue. And even in January, the chair, chief, and I, along with Councilmember Deb Barber, who chairs our Transportation Committee, are going to do listening sessions out on the LRT, and I'm sure we'll gather more feedback that will continue to inform our progress. So with
Thank you
that,
so
Mr.
much.
Chair, we're
Thank
done.
you for your presentation. And so, members, we will go to member questions. For those that are members of the committee that are attending virtually, if you use the raise hand function, if you have a question, we'll call on you. But in the meantime, we have two people on the list. First, Vice Chair Tabke, and then Representative Petersburg.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So first, I just want to say thank you to a lot of folks, including Chair Hornstein, for calling this hearing today, for discussing. We are, as we all know, evidently we haven't hit winter yet exactly. Hasn't been super cold out yet, but as we know and have experienced in the Metro, that winter is a time where we run into bigger issues on transit system, and we want to make sure that we have a clear conversation about where we're going and what's happening, so everybody's on the same page. And understanding that the bill that we passed this past session is intended to 100%, the goal is to increase ridership, so we make sure we have more people using the system and it's benefiting everyone and working that way. And we, along with that, we were very clear in the language that we are making sure to first provide the resources and the assistance and help that people need before the enforcement side of things. So I've got two questions I'd like you to weigh in on, however works best for you. The first is, how is that going on the providing assistance versus enforcement kind of thing? Are we hitting a good balance? Are we getting where we need? And then second, there are a lot of partners. So there's a lot of nonprofits, a lot of folks who are here today. So thank you, everybody, for your work in helping get this moving and active. And with that, there also a big part of this issue came about because of where this is an interjurisdictional transit line. And so there's a lot of folks who, I think it was a lot of finger pointing back and forth saying that's your issue, no, that's your issue, and it wasn't all coming together. And so we had the legislature this year, bring everybody together in this bill to do that. How are those partnerships working? Are we getting what we need? Is there enough communication between everyone to get to the points where this can not only be a success today, but successful into the future? So just those questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tapke. Before the Met Council responds, I just wanted to let folks know, here are the people that I have on the list, and we're going to cut it off at Chair Cagle, because we have many members of the public that have a lot to say, and we want to make sure we get to their testimony. So we're going to have Vice Chair Tapke's question answered, then I have Representative Petersburg, Representative Elkins, Representative Sensor-Mira, and then Representative Cagle, and then we're going to go to public testimony. So I would ask the Met Council members to keep your answers focused and crisp so we can get all of this information done and move on quickly to the public testimony. So who wants to respond to Vice Chair Tapke's question?
Sure. Chair Hornstein, Representative Tapke. I would say, especially through the Transit Service Intervention Project, we've really made a lot of progress making those partnerships and making sure we are striking that balance between providing services and making sure people know what resources are available to them, and ensuring that that's well coordinated with the work of our police department too. And I know Chief Morales works very closely with Selena Martina on our team, who's really leading the coordination of the Transit Service Intervention Project. So we've, within Metro Transit, made sure we're really coordinated along those lines. So.
Thank you. Okay. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. And thank you for coming here too. I think I have basically two questions during Chief Morales' presentation. One is in regards to the staff shortages. It appears that we're still woefully short. My calculation says we're only 64% at strength for law enforcement, 17% at strength for community service officers. Do you have an opinion as to why it's so difficult to get up to full strength and what are the challenges there?
Chief Morales.
Chair, Representative, yes, so we're coming out of several tough years in the law enforcement profession. Obviously, with the death of George Floyd, young individuals are rethinking and reconsidering whether they want to come into a profession where they're not necessarily going to be welcomed, depending on what area you work in. For Metro Transit, a big part of the cities we work in are part of the Twin Cities, which is urban policing. It's a different kind of policing. It's not the same policing as in suburb areas where policing is slower. We have societal issues that we have to deal with, and we are working on the Pathways program. I believe that by investing in the future of the department, we will have a steady resource of candidates if we focus on the future, as opposed to what we have been doing in the state of Minnesota, and that's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And we're just moving resources around in regards to police officers, so we want to build our own candidate pool so we can go to there.
And your second question. Thank you. Your second question, Representative
Yeah,
Petersburg.
thank you for that challenge you have. The other one is kind of a combined one. The breakdown of crimes, is it possible for us to get the breakdown of crimes? Because you have it listed as groupings, and sometimes that's helpful. But my last question is, I noticed that when you started the supplemental security, you pretty much entirely emphasized on the Blue Line and Minneapolis-St. Paul, even though St. Paul had a significant amount of crimes as well, and now just starting to do that. What was the thought processes on just kind of taking care of the Blue Line instead?
Chief Morales.
Chair, Representative. Right, so before I even started, I went on the lines with my wife as a private citizen. I wasn't even employed by the Met Council at that time, and our first experience was the Blue Line. We realized quickly that the airport was the eyes to Minnesota. I didn't want anybody's impression to come in, see something undesirable, and believe that that was what the state of Minnesota represented. Followed by the Mall of America, which is the largest mall in America, second attraction. And then we have our sports arenas. We have Target Center and Target Field. So we felt that by putting resources into the Blue Line, we would send a message that we are committed to cleaning up the perception of our light rail system and then spreading that around.
Thank you. Representative Elkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got two quick questions. They should be easy to answer. First of all, I can see we're putting cameras everywhere. Are we putting monitors on the train so that the riders can see that they're being seen?
Chair Hornstein, Representative Elkins. Yes, not on buses, I should say. So we are in the process, and some buses have these, but yeah, having the monitors for exactly what you're saying, so people can see themselves and know that they're being monitored.
And your second question,
Second
Representative
question, real
Elkins.
quick, is that there's been a lot of calls for enclosing the stations. But, you know, I spent probably a good half hour, 45 minutes the other day looking for examples of at-grade enclosed stations, and I used both Google and ChatGPT, and neither one of them could find me a single picture of an enclosed at-grade LRT station anywhere in the country. Are you seeing any models that you could use to enclose stations?
Chair Hornstein,
General Manager
Representative.
Canderas.
Representative Elkins. So we have a study underway looking at exactly that question, both what other transit agencies are doing and really understanding, given the way our system has been designed, what options there would be, if any options to do enclosures, but also it's part of that broader look at what are some of the infrastructure changes we could make to improve really that sense of safety through environmental design.
So
Thank you for the research, Representative Elkins. on
yeah,
that.
you know, it comes up over and over and over again.
Yeah,
I just
we're-
can't find any models for it anywhere.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question and your response. We'll have Representative Sencer-Mira, and then our last committee question will come from Chair Cagle.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions and then maybe I think one that is just a follow-up ask for data. So the first one is, you know, there have in the last year on Lake Street at I think various transit modes, there have been, you know, multiple incidents of violence against trans community members. I know at the Lake Street station, I think about in January or February of last year, a trans woman was assaulted and then, you know, incredibly tragically, a trans woman was killed and I believe it was either the Lake Street station or the 35W Lake Street station. I'm not sure exactly which one. But so I'm wondering if you can, you know, as we're thinking about public safety and really public safety for all community members, can you talk about, you know, how are you all thinking about specifically making sure that members of the trans community are safe?
Yeah, Chair Hornstein.
General Manager.
Representative Sencer-Mira, maybe I'll start this, but invite the chief to weigh in to just first appreciate you raising that issue, and it is something that violence in general on our system is deeply concerning, and the examples you mentioned is very much something we've been looking at to just in general as we look to improve safety on our system. I think, you know, in part it goes back to having more presence out there and really trying to deter some of the behavior that may result in a violent interaction. And certainly would invite the chief to say if there's additional steps we are taking.
Chief?
Chair. It's very important that we provide a fair and impartial service for everybody involved. We're all inclusive. But we've had meetings with the transgender community, especially the LGBT plus community, to have them feel welcomed and to raise any and address any concerns that they may be raising.
Thank you. And then you had a second question, I believe, Representative
Yeah,
Sencer-Mira.
so my second question is, I think Chair Zelli, I was at the same forum with you at the University of Minnesota and heard about the program in Philadelphia. I think one thing that stuck with me about that program was the partnership that they had with medical school students. So they described partnering with medical school students to, I think, kind of act similar to the TRIP personnel, but who are specifically providing what they called street medicine. So they talked about, you know, talking to people about their ailments. They talked about even doing like wound care on the train, you know, having Narcan, things like that. Have you all looked into some kind of partnership like that? I think, you know, when we think about the various services that, or interventions that can be provided on the trains, I was really interested in that particular service.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Representative, this was a part of the SEPTA program that actually had a partnership with Drexel University to provide on a pro bono basis, and I think maybe some of the medical students were receiving credit to wear jumpsuits that said health navigators. And they really were providing street medicine and also, frankly, some of the services to refer to where real health services could be provided. And I think that is certainly a model that we're investigating. In fact, I think you remember, since we were at the university, that we are in the process of going to Dean Toller and saying, maybe this is something we should pursue. And I think so far, nothing has been codified, but we are, think that, and other ideas of actually providing volunteer support, even adopting a transit station stop is something that we've had in the past. We can actually get more community members to take ownership of the system, and I think that Drexel University is a great example. Maybe we could do that here, but I think there's other ideas like that that we should be doing.
Thank you, Chair. And then the last question, Chair Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question and comment. So I was just looking at slide 6, and I'm kind of curious about what the enforcement looks like. Here it says enforcement arrests are likely to be the result of proactive policing. What does that look like? I'm just kind of curious, like how that,
Chair, Representative
Chief.
Cagle. So what that looks like is, with the police officers now being proactive and going out into the field, they're making more arrests, they're making more citations. And let's be clear about this. We aren't going to arrest our way out of this situation. We're looking to team up and get the resources needed for the people that need them. However, there are repeat offenders, and sometimes our only alternative is to arrest, to give them a timeout, and then establish those long-term resources that they need. And we rely, basically, when I first got here, on our HAT team, our homeless action team, but now we have our transit service intervention project partners, and that's going to go a long way, and we're already seeing dividends right now.
Thank you.
and then I
Sure,
guess
quick
just one,
follow-up?
yeah, I just wanted to, going back to some of the slides about the partners on, what was it? The one where the, slide 17, so these are the council must seek participation from. I really want to emphasize that there are parts outside of outside of Ramsey and Hennepin County that are seeing problems too. We have a pretty urban area in Anoka County that, I've had a lot of complaints and safety issues, not only with the buses, but with traffic, so.
Chair
Thank you.
Hornstein.
Yes, General Manager.
Just appreciate you raising that. And one clarification, the Transit Service Intervention Project, the way it was written was specific to light rail, which is why you're seeing those cities and counties that we're involving. But that being said, we're learning a lot from this experience and really developing deeper partnerships. And I think we'll be able to take what we're learning from this and expand it moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your coming before the committee, and please stick around if there are any other additional items that come up from our public testimony that we may want to check in with you about. And I want to go directly now into members of the public that have signed up, and
Thank you.
Thank you again. And we want to, we'll end here at 2:30, and so in order for that to happen successfully, I'm going to allow 3 minutes per testifier. It's a little bit more than we usually do, but this is important, and but I will, make sure that we keep it to 3 minutes so that everybody who has signed up has the chance to testify. We want to make sure that, so be considerate of others and keep your testimony to 3 minutes. So the first testifier that has signed up is Eric Peterson. Is Eric here? Okay, great. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair Hornstein, Vice Chair Tacky, and committee members. My name is Eric Peterson, Intergovernmental Relations here at the City of St. Paul. In the room earlier was our Office of Neighborhood Safety Director, Brooke Blakey. Unfortunately, she had to step out. As you all probably saw in the news last week, we had an officer-involved shooting, and so that body cam footage will be released here at 2 o'clock, and so she had to go to that, so we do apologize. But I will give her remarks here in support of the TSEP program here. So the benefit that this pilot has provided is continued innovative approach to public safety that focuses on engaging directly with our community, utilizing policies, procedures, and operations that are more progressive, equitable, and answer to the needs of our community are better serving for all of the system riders. This establishment of the project aligns with our community response teams that the Office of Neighborhood Safety, our COAST team, our HEART team, and our CARES team does at the city that address those experiencing homelessness, mental health crisis, or substance abuse issues with wraparound services which have provided seamless interactions. The TSIP has also allowed direct engagement with our Metro Transit Police Department, our Homeless Action Team, our community-based organizations, and advocacy groups that have contributed and provided guidance to the agency's interactions with communities, which is essential to building a sense of trust and ownership. The addition of the community-based organizations that have been providing support to transit riders with the Community First Public Safety Framework by providing consistent and equitable partnership with the services provided and offered to the community. I wanted to just thank you, Chair Hornstein and Vice Chair Tapke, for your work and committee members on this topic and allowing me to share Director Blakey's perspective and the city's perspective in partnership with the Met Council, the HAT team, and the TSIP program. So happy to take any questions, but thank you for the opportunity for me to share her remarks.
Great. Thank you, Eric Peterson, for your comments. Next on the list, we have Stephen Huser from the city of Minneapolis. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Steve Huser. I'm a government relations representative with the city of Minneapolis. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to testify on this issue. I want to start by saying that the city of Minneapolis shares the overall goal of creating a safe regional transit system, and we're feeling very good about the prospects of the work that's begun and is ongoing in that regard with these two programs. The city has worked well with Metro Transit staff across several parts of the city of Minneapolis enterprise. The Intergovernmental Relations Department, which I belong to, along with the Neighborhood Safety Department, and I think all of the council offices have worked really well with the staff. Intergovernmental Relations has provided input in terms of getting TSIP off the ground and our relationships with some of the different groups that can be contracted with to do some of your non-traditional community safety type work, violence intervention work. We were sharing that experience with Met Council. As I said, several council offices have been in regular coordination with Metro Transit staff. Metro Transit staff has helped to address specific issues at specific light rail stops along the system. They've both addressed safety issues as well as quality of life concerns at those stops. Councilmember Chavez and Councilmember Johnson's office specifically wanted to make sure that I expressed that they've had regular meetings, that the council staff has come to ward meetings, and I'm sure that that's a reflection also of across the city council. So I wanted to thank Metro Transit for that coordination. The most recent city budget has included an amendment that provided transit safety coordinators. One-time amount of $720,000 was included. And so this, the work of those transit safety coordinators will hopefully then further increase the amount of coordination that we can do with Metro Transit. We will, just to kind of wrap up, we appreciate the responsiveness and the coordination that we've seen so far, and we really look forward to building upon that going forward.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we have Jen O'Rourke. Welcome. Please state your name and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Tabke, and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer O'Rourke. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Ramsey County. I'm here today on behalf of Elizabeth Tolzman, our Chief of Staff, who's been participating in the TRIP work over the course of the summer and this fall and was our lead person on that. She wanted to be here today, but we've had a lot going on, and today was a big county board day with passing the budget, our platform, and whatnot. First of all, I'd like to remind the committee members and the public that geographically, Ramsey County, which you're in right now, is the smallest county in the state. We have the second highest population with over 540,000 residents, and we're the most diverse population between residents racially and ethnically as well. We need this transit system to work for everyone. The county manager tasked Ms. Tolzman to be the point person at the county for the Transit Service Intervention Project because we wanted a high-level perspective on the cross-jurisdictional work needed. Some of the leaders that have been involved in this work at the county both last session and throughout the summer and fall include Commissioners Ortega and Moran, Public Works Director Brian Isaacson, Housing Stability, which is our homelessness work, Keith Lattimore, and Social Services Divisional Director Sophia Thompson, who handles our social services. We are very happy to see this project include so many community organizations, both in Ms. Canderas' presentation today, but also going back to last year's legislation. We see this work being done so efficiently by these community organizations in a lot of what we do at Ramsey County, and we are glad to see that done here. Just want to point out a few things for purposes of my comments. Well, the statistics show that crime is often down during the day. We need this transit system to work better and be safer around the clock. Ramsey County has residents working late hours and often third shift. With such diverse resident populations, the improvements need to spread to a broader set of operations hours so that folks who work these off shifts and likely have higher transit needs can benefit from all these efforts. We are very glad to see the last week's news of the non-sworn personnel checking fares. This is one of the actions that my commissioners hear a lot from residents that will help uphold the integrity of the service and encourage more people to utilize transit when there is an accountability mechanism. We'd like to point out that given the short timeline of the project thus far, we hope to see more time to track data, trends, and qualitative stories and experiences to see better results in the work. Much of this data is a snapshot of time, and it's important to just keep checking the trends and impacts. Finally, I would just like to point out and end my comments with about a year ago, Ramsey County changed a lot of our commuting and parking things at the county. A number of us gave up our parking pass and now have used Metro Transit instead. So I'd just like to point that out as an example of where we see Ramsey County living our values and encouraging residents to work, play, and do businesses in the downtowns.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate
you.
it. Yeah. Next, we have Danielle Werder from Hennepin County. Danielle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you for joining us virtually. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Danielle Werder, and I'm the area manager of the Hennepin County Office to End Homelessness, where I lead teams supporting the homeless response system. At Hennepin County, our vision for our services continuum is to ensure that homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. We seek to minimize new entries to homelessness, increase transitions from homelessness into permanent housing, and finance affordable housing along the housing continuum. We engage in outreach and engagement activities throughout the community through intensive one-to-one, data-driven support to connect people in need to housing, services, and benefits. As part of the Transit Service Intervention Project, we have been a consistent partner in the social service outreach and engagement activities. We have participated in 10 events during Phase 1 in coordination with the Metro Transit and community-based nonprofits, as well as regular outreach engagements weekly with the Homeless Action Team. At these events, we engage people to understand how we can best serve them. We learn what types of barriers are keeping them out of housing. Throughout these conversations, we've learned that individuals are in need of benefits, shelter, navigation, and support with accessing housing. We often do an assessment for our coordinated entry system, which is our access point to homeless dedicated housing resources. County staff has also been engaged in a series of check-ins with key partners. 2 Hennepin County social workers specializing in serving people experiencing unsheltered homelessness go out on engagements with the Homeless Action Team on transit at least 2 hours a week and engage with an average of 10 people experiencing homelessness each time. To just share a quick success story, while engaging in outreach with the Homeless Action Team, the 2 social workers connected with a 60-year-old male, we'll call him Jim, who has been experiencing homelessness for several years, primarily staying on transit. Through several engagements, the social workers partnered with the Homeless Action Team. They were able to identify housing option, assisted with the housing search, and implemented support services once Jim moved in. Jim has now been successfully housed since August. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for your testimony and your work. Next, we have Dalen Prochaska. Is Dalen here? Welcome. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Chair Hornstein, Chair Tabke, members of the committee. My name is Dalen Prochaska. I'm the Transit Justice Organizer for MN 350. I'm here to raise some concerns about consequences of this policy. The updated Code of Conduct rightfully includes an allowance for sleeping on the transit system, recognizing that many have nowhere else to go. However, most residents who are forced to use the transit system for shelter rarely can pay fares that will last them throughout the night. For people facing homelessness, poverty, addiction, and/or mental health needs, the new fare enforcement fees are still regressive. These are not fees that houseless clients can pay, and these ultimately place more strain on the resources of unhoused residents and the programs that serve them. These programs have funds that remove barriers that prevent clients from moving forward with their case plans. These programs will now have to spend more time and money paying these fees for clients experiencing extreme poverty. As we enter winter, unsheltered residents need places to escape intolerable cold. An eviction is scheduled this week for Camp Nenokasi, which will displace hundreds of unhoused Indigenous people from the only place where they can stay warm throughout freezing conditions, engage with housing and treatment services, and stay connected with their support network. There are no shelter capacity anywhere in the city. There are no warming shelters anywhere in the city. The trains and buses are many people's last resort, and many more will be forced to use them after this week. To evict someone with no other options is criminal, and people will die as a result of this policy. Therefore, we have to implement an exception to the fare for unsheltered residents using the transit system to stay warm throughout the night. Immediately implement this policy by providing your intervention teams with special bus cards to provide to unhoused residents without alternatives or the ability to pay the fare. Many of the unhoused Black and Indigenous residents we know are being profiled, harassed, displaced, and experiencing other negative interactions with officers on the transit system, even when they pay their fare. Provide these special bus cards to outreach workers, community-based organizations, and other organizers who engage with unhoused residents regularly to minimize additional harmful interactions. These special bus cards are a mechanism to engage the most vulnerable residents in our city and connect them to outreach, treatment, and housing services. If you fail to implement this policy, you are creating additional barriers that undermine efforts to rehabilitate vulnerable residents and as a result, drive up crime and incarceration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I particularly want to just express my appreciation for your perspective. I don't remember when, it was maybe 15 years or so, Senator Dibble and I did a bill to have discount passes, and I think you're taking that a step further, and it is worthy of consideration, so I appreciate that. All right, next up, we have Lisa Clemens. Is Lisa here? Oh. Ah, there you are. That's okay. That's okay.
So sometimes images tells you a story. So these are all reports. I'm sorry, should I start?
No, welcome.
I'm sorry,
State your
Lisa
name
Clemens.
and proceed.
Okay, I'm the CEO of Mother's Love Initiative. We now have a contract with Metro Transit that ends in December, but it's one of the greatest partnerships that we've ever had. So for the young man who just sat here and spoke, we agree with you and we disagree. This is reports. These are all forms that have been filled out from people on and around transit bus shelters who need resources and help. Our team filled these out, and these are by the month, starting in March, all the way into now. We fill these out and we call everybody back and get the resources to them that they need. These are reports that we create every single day that we're on Metro Transit. Some of them say it was a nice day. Some of them are crisis reports. While we do support this initiative, we support it acknowledging what this young man just said. If you address the issues in and around the shelters, you can de-escalate a lot of it before they even get on the bus. So we do purchase TAP cards, thanks to Metro Transit for helping us do that, to make sure that people who cannot afford it and who are struggling and who have addiction issues can get on the bus and have a safe ride without being intimidated and afraid to do that. So we just wanted to come up and say we are in the middle where we understand this initiative, but we also understand that these are a lot of people on and around Metro Transit who are asking us for help. And we would like to continue giving them that help and not bring it into, I'm a retired cop, so I'm with that. We cannot risk our way out of this, but we have to be prepared to give the resources to the people who need them so that they feel safe on our transit as well.
Thank you, but before you leave, Vice Chair Tabke has a question for
I was hoping
you.
he didn't have a question.
Yes.
Wasn't everyone. So thank you first for your work. We've talked previously about this, and I just appreciate everything you're doing. And I just wanted to raise this up as a really good example of the intent and what we're trying to do is that exactly what you've got up there is what we need to do 10,000-fold is making sure to get to find ways and more creative ways and better ways and fund getting to the people that need help and providing that assistance to them. There's, in this last session, we, as everyone knows, we passed well over $1 billion for housing. We passed a lot of money for helping with homelessness and mental health and addiction and those kinds of things. And that's all working through the system and will continue to help. And Metro Transit and Met Council are not a social services provider, and that's just not in their wheelhouse of what they do. So having folks like you there and organizations like yours there really is critical for meeting those needs as well as local governments and that kind of thing. What other things could we, as we get into the 24 session, do to help you and other folks, other organizations be more successful? Is it a funding? Is it more policy changes? Like what kinds of things can we or should we be thinking about as we move into the future, specifically on the transit side of things? We can't solve the world,
Right.
But on the transit side of things, what can or should we be looking at?
I think more consistent funding versus like a one-year thing. Once you create those relationships and build that trust, you want to be able to stay out there doing that work. And it's really hard because you have to keep doing a new RFP every year and starting all over again. Brooklyn Center Transit, when we got there, everybody came there to fight. So we've been there consistent. A lot of the young girls we see in there, they come from JDC, so they know us. But I think being consistent and having the resources immediately available. And Metro Transit has been amazing in making sure that we have the resources that we need and a partnership is strong and they respond to us immediately when we call and say we need them. So just having those strong partnerships, but it really does start off the bus. If you capture it before it gets on the bus. People riding the bus shouldn't be standing outside the shelter and people using drugs or having some issues stand inside your shelters. That should be the reverse, and that's what we're seeing. So if I can just say this, thankful to Metro Transit. I know I'm saying it a lot, but I promise you, they have been great partners to us. But they have allowed us to venture out past just getting on the buses, getting on the trains, staying at a shelter. They have allowed us to have a bus shelter team where we actually go on Lake Street into the different shelters in North Minneapolis where the violence starts and have those conversations, calming, de-escalating conversations, so that when they do get on the bus, they're in a calmer way.
Thank you for so much for that perspective. Vice Chair Tabke, please keep it brief because we have members of the public that want
One reiterate for everyone is that this first part of the program goes through June, and that's where the funding is available. But then beyond that, it's our legislative expectation that these relationships and this that we've built will continue through and be funded through the Metro-wide sales tax. And so I just wanted to make sure everyone knows and recognizes that the intent is for this to be a long-term relationship piece.
Well, we're not part of that funding, though. Our contract ends in December. So we will be reapplying in January with the new effort. But I left you some information up on the table with a breakdown of all.
Okay, we'll have someone retrieve that and pass it around to folks. But thank you, Vice Chair Tabke. Thank you very much for your work. We appreciate your partnership, and thank you, Vice Chair Tabke, for raising that. I know that question of ongoing funding came up at a gathering we had in September downtown Minneapolis on this update on this program. So, Naz Narkati is next from Move Minnesota. And then we'll have Abu Naeem and Amity Foster. Welcome to the committee. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hi there, I am Nas. I work for Move Minnesota Action. and it is surreal to speak with you all today since the groundwork that Move Minnesota laid with Representative Tapke on transit safety back in 2020 is now in the implementation phase. So it's an honor to be here, and thank you to the committee for having me. The last few months have consisted of me having hundreds of unique face-to-face conversations with transit riders regarding their experiences with the service. Around the clock, I went everywhere and spoke to people. North Minneapolis, Linden Hills, Southwest Station, Uptown, Snelling, Lexington, downtown in both cities, up and down the blue and the green lines, Dale, Southside, Rice, and Frogtown, and more. I was and am completely obsessed with the stories of those we make decisions for. Their stories and opinions inform us and should precede our actions. I asked them about their thoughts on transit and their priorities, and I learned about them and their dreams for a new world. Although opinions about transit differed from neighborhood to neighborhood, one thing remained consistent. When asked to rank choice vote between 6 different potential initiatives, the most commonly picked highest priority one was improved safety. That's not surprising, but it's good to have the data and it's reassuring. What I did not realize was the intense severity of the situation. A month ago, I spoke to a child with a backpack on around Lexington and Concordia near the light rail, and I asked him why he picked safety as his #1 priority. And he said, lightheartedly, "I fear for my life every time I'm on the light rail." But I didn't think that that was a funny thing to say, so I asked him more sternly if he actually meant that, and he said, "I do." A man older than my grandfather showed me the machete in his bag, and he told me that he's a non-violent person, but he keeps it with him to be safe because he knows he's vulnerable, and he's had to pull it out against his own moral convictions. That's how scared he was. I met a woman from Japan outside of US Bank Stadium 2 months ago, and she was a tourist. Japan, a culture where it's rude to even speak on transit. And she said to me, "It's interesting that you guys are allowed to smoke on the train. We can do better." And we will. Right now, we have a chance to do exactly that. When I spoke to those hundreds of people I mentioned, I asked them what they thought about the Transit Ambassador Program. And not one single person out of the hundreds opposed that idea. The people consistently wanted somebody from Metro Transit on our vehicles. That was a fact. Right now, the program is just getting started. With the new fare enforcement program launched last week, as the TRIP program continues, we ask that fares be enforced fairly and reasonably, and even those who have not paid their fares are members of the community and deserve to be treated justly with compassion and respect. And maybe after our agents and ambassadors make our system safer, we might not even need fares. The future is very exciting, and we think that it's bright. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate your work with transit riders. Next, we have Abu Naeem, a community member. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Hornstein, for inviting me. My name's Abu Naeem. I'm a St. Paul resident, community advocate, and board member of the Hamlin Midway Coalition. I would like to share my traumatic experience with the transit police, their response, and my recommendation. On September 12th, I was riding the Green Line around 10 p.m., and there was a fight that broke out in the train car. There was a clear agitator, and a bunch of stocky passengers sort of broke up the fight. And the agitator did not want to sort of leave the car, and that led to sort of a scuffle outside the car. And that's when the Metro Transit police got involved. And one of the passengers sort of went inside the car and showed clear signs of facial irritation, possibly from mace or some sort of, propellant. And that's when the officer sort of came into the passenger car, and the passengers, including myself, said, the passenger was not the agitator. And the officer ignored our pleas and continued to detain the passenger, which eventually led to the passenger being tased and then partially, removed from the car. And his friend was very upset and saying, this is unfair, they're not involved. And he also got detained as well. And the situation was escalating. And when I thought this was over, there was the train car was about to close, and there was an officer that opened the door and went in front of the aisle and said, does anyone else want to speak up? Threatening, intimidating the passengers in the car. And there was a white woman from a distance said, leave. And the officer continued to repeated himself again. Does anyone wants to speak up? And then the woman said to leave again. And then the officer left. And the entire process was, it was a huge struggle because I felt very powerless seeing this police brutality coming right in front of my face. And I was really afraid if I spoke up, I would be arrested and detained as well. And yeah, it feels terrible. It just feels like I'm a coward in these moments where you see injustices and not doing anything and just, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm not gonna go further into it, but so I would be very quick. So on the following day, I filed a report with the transit police. The responding officer lacked empathy, and I made a direct request regarding a case number and police badge numbers to sort of follow through. They said it would take us several weeks to months, and since the last time I made my testimony, they finally sort of reached back. And my quick recommendation would be having citizen oversight of the Metro Transit Police and a reform on the complaint process, so it's fully transparent and anyone that's making a complaint can follow through on what's happening. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate your coming and sharing your story.
All right. Thank you so much for writing me.
Yeah, thanks. So next we have Amity Foster. And is there anyone else? So Amity is the last public testifier we have on the list, but I know if there's is there anyone else that would like to testify after Amity that hasn't signed up? Okay, so we'll take you after Amity.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome to
Chair.
the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the community. My name is Amity Foster. I'm a member of Isaiah, and I live in Northeast Minneapolis. First, I am a huge transit lover, fan, community member. I want to couch what I'm about, what I had prepared to say. Sometimes I think I get so hyper-focused on the good parts of our transit system and what it can be that I hear stories like that and I shift them into, that was a one-time thing. It doesn't happen all the time. Thank you for sharing that. I think it actually gets us into the mindset that we need to be to build out the transit system that is safe, efficient, useful for everyone who wants to take it. We have to hear that and not just hear, that's a one-time thing, we can address that, here's our follow-up number. But actually, that's the systemic issues that we are facing right now. So I just want to name that before I get into what I was going to say, which is I wanted to give you an update on my experiences on transit recently. I take the 11 and a bunch of other buses. Those are still pretty mellow. Ridership is increasing, which is really great to see. I do take the Green Line to work. Over the past few months, I have noticed fewer people smoking on the train. It seems cleaner, it feels safer. I also haven't seen a lot of officers, CSOs, or police, or otherwise. I'm not sure how much of that can be attributed to the nicer weather and how much to the efforts of the system itself. I think that honestly just comes down to the times that I'm riding the train, nothing beyond that. There is still a lot of trash at light rail stations, and honestly, I think that's a major factor in attracting more ridership and the feel of safety. There's very small practical things like trash collection that are actually incredibly important. I do appreciate the efforts being made, and there's also bigger things: dedicated bus lanes, faster rollout of BRTs, signal priority, more efficiency. I'm glad to see safety being addressed directly through TSIP and TRIP, and we cannot lose sight of the indirect system-wide build-outs that are necessary. Finally, cold weather is here. Encampments are being evicted. People are going to end up being back on transit people who had shelter and care, maybe not the care the government deems appropriate, but they had a community. I am worried that we're going to cycle backwards and that the transit safety programs won't be able to address other cities' failures to support the needs of all of their residents. I am curious to know Metro Transit's plans around this, particularly staffing. Is there flexibility in how our transit safety programs will address the growing needs of our communities? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of your work over a long time on this issue. So we have Matthew Hiller, and then I saw another hand up, so we'll take Matthew Hiller and one more testifier, and then we'll adjourn. And we're still here, we're on track. We have 5 minutes, so if you could keep it to just maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll have our last testifier. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Matthew Hiller. I've been a frequent rider of Metro Transit for the last 5 years. At times, as it's been my only method of transportation, so I greatly appreciate all the work that you all do here. And I'm very excited to hear about the efforts from our community outreach, providing resources for our houseless neighbors on the system. However, I think there was a stat put out earlier about the about staffing shortages, and I think it was like 17% capacity for outreach workers versus 60% for the police. And also I appreciated the the recent hate crimes against the trans community being brought up. And I'd like to say, as someone with more trans friends than cis, I don't know that a single one of my friends would feel safer with police presence. I think emphasizing that community outreach is going to be much more effective for the trans community and for the houseless community. Just hearing about repeat offenders and them being put in a timeout. Again, what we're talking about here is people that have nowhere else to go to stay warm. And it seems to me like a colossal waste of resources to be continually arresting these people and throwing them in jail when we could instead simply, as the representative from MN 350 suggested, just provide them a free ridership card. It'll be cheaper, not to mention much more humane. It just seems, especially in light of the recent, or the upcoming eviction of Camp Unicasi, seems really to be a no-brainer to me, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before Beth Blick comes up, who will be our last public testifier, I saw that Representative Kraft had a question or a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't remember the individual's name who spoke about the incident he had with
That was
Metro Transit.
Abu Naeem.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So hearing that kind of a story is distressing. I would love to get some response from Metro Transit. My question would be is, not on the specifics, you may not be able to go into it, but in a situation like that, if there are, like, how would you respond to that? Are there, with the cameras on light rail, would you be able to see that? Like, that's obviously, this is really important to have safety, but that kind of a story gives one pause.
So
that's not the kind of safety we
I
need.
think that's a very appropriate question, and I think that Chief Morales is available. You can come back up to the testifying table, and then we'll hear from Chief Morales, we'll hear from Beth Blick, and then we'll close up our hearing. Just a couple minutes past 2:30 here. Chief Morales, welcome back. Glad you can be here and stay and respond.
Thank you, Chair. Representative, yes, and Mr. Naeem. First, I want to apologize for your traumatic experience on our systems. That's not what we aim to do, so I will begin with an apology. Secondly, I will let the committee know that we looked into this. We looked at not only did Mr. Naeem get a response immediately, we've been trying to reach out to him for the last several days, and I spoke with him right before the hearings began today. But more importantly, when we looked into this incident, what we realized is, yes, Mr. Naeem was sitting up with the instigators and the fight. He actually fled from that ongoing violent incident that took place on the train. Now, we had officers there on the platform based on a sporting event that was going on. The officer was situated on the platform, not knowing what took place on the train itself. So when those individuals exited the train, our peacemaker was now the agitator, and there was an actual physical altercation taking place on the platform. That is what the officer saw. The officer immediately engaged. He did deploy his pepper spray, striking both individuals. Now, I will say, from our procedural standpoint, he will be coached on this. He should have announced his presence, right? But I do not want the Monday night quarterback in the officer's situation when he's going into a violent situation. The original instigator from that incident then immediately fled. The peacemaker, who became the agitator, went right back into the train. That's who the officer followed back into the train. He tried to take custody of him, seeing how he deployed his pepper spray. So he had to take custody of him. As he was trying to gain control of him, another individual interceded in that interaction. So now there were two individuals on one officer in a crowded car. So command presence is very important when we have approximately 40 individuals in the car and we have one officer who's trying to take control of the situation. So while Mr. Naeem perceives it as being intimidating, I would call it command presence. There's one of me, 50 of you. I need to establish command presence. With that said, we can do better. We understand that we're a public serving agency and we serve our commuters, and that's absolutely important. I'm willing to answer any questions if there are follow-up questions to that incident.
Well, I appreciate Representative Kraft, your follow-up, and again, Chief, thank you for giving your perspective. And you know, it's important again that we hear from the public. And these are good things to share and helpful to hear your perspective. So
thank you.
With that, any follow-up, Representative Kraft? Did you want to say anything more? Okay, thank you again. And we will hear from Beth Blick briefly, and then we will adjourn. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, thank you. Frank Hornstein and committee. As somebody who used to live in St. Paul, who took the Green Line quite a bit and the regular city bus, I would say that it felt so annoying and cumbersome when police would always demand to see my card, and it felt so classist to the core, you know, and you know, it's the kind of thing that would never happen to a rich person. And there were many times when I badly wanted to say, you know, why don't you concentrate more on violent types of incidents? And then, you know, like when somebody smoked on the Green Line, you know, there never was an officer around, and I was left to play damage control, to yell at, you know, that other individual that I didn't care for their damn smoke around me, you know, and so when I called the police, you know, it's like, well, you know, call us next time if this happens again, you know, like, hey, that's, you know, gonna do any good now after the fact. So I really had a problem with that.
Well, I appreciate your sharing that, and this is a good note to end on because
yeah.
What you had said about officers collecting fares versus you know, attending to other, you know, incidents that might be higher priority. That is
Exactly.
one of the pieces that we wanted to address here with the administrative citations.
Right.
And so, and then the other piece related to your testimony, which I think again was important to note, is to have the non-sworn personnel freed up to, you know, both collect fares, but then address some of the other issues, whether it's, the population, houseless population, others that are in need of services. So we have that group now coming on, again, so that those functions can be performed rather than with officers. So thank you for raising that question.
Oh,
And
you
and
bet.
those are, a couple of the ideas that
Okay.
undergird Vice Chair Tapke's work. So with that, members, thank you to all the testifiers. Thank you to the Met Council and for your presentation. This is a piece that is going to be ongoing, not just the funding, Ms. Clemens, that needs to be ongoing, but the discussion of this issue needs to be ongoing, and the legislature, this is a high priority for us as it is to the public, and we will continue to engage with Metro Transit and the Met Council as this develops and as it's enhanced, and we need to make corrections and adjustments as we move forward, we will do so. So I want to wish everybody happy holidays and a happy new year. We do anticipate potentially one more informational hearing before we get into the regular session, which starts February 12th. And that hearing, again, will be setting the agenda and the date, but it'll probably be around maybe the third week of January. So, and again, all members, if you have items that you want to make sure we hear during the regular session and issues, please continue to talk to myself. And I wanted to, just before we leave, introduce Matt Bauman, who is our new committee administrator. I should have done this right off the bat. But you may know that Enid Swaggart has moved on to, she's living now in Pennsylvania and doing very well in law school, from what I understand. But Matt has come on just last week. So we now have our committee administrator, and we welcome you and appreciate your work with us. So with that, members, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.